We talking rom-com, we talking action, we talking drama and movie classics. Whatever you want, yo, we have it. Cause we talking movies on the podcast. So I married a film critic. So I married a film critic. So I married a film critic. Hey honey, I just want to talk about the movie like casually. You don't have to bring up the cinematography. Honestly, let's just talk about like how the characters were fun. Married a film critic. So I married a film critic. So I married a film.
Welcome to So I Married a Film Critic. It's me, your co-host Julia, with my film critic husband.
Hey, how you doing, everybody? We're talking about Night of the Living Dead, which is perfect for the month of October. Hopefully, we'll get this on the air at the appropriate time. If you're listening to this in December, something has gone horribly wrong.
Or not. Or you could just like horror movies.
Yeah, you know, that would be me. I mean, I'd watch Night of the Living Dead in December, February, whenever, Labor Day.
Well, let's tell our lovely listeners why we watched this movie. We were sitting on the couch and I said, hey, do you want to watch something? And you said, I have homework to do.
Yeah, well, I'm teaching a class at the University of Hawaii Maui College. The class is horror cinema. And this week we're dealing with predominantly independently made horror films, two films in particular, the 60s, that are very influential, very important. And I love these movies. One is Carnival of Souls, and the other is Night of the Living Dead. So I suggested, can we watch one of these tonight? You would actually be saving me some time, so, you know, get to do my homework. And you remembered that we saw Carnival of Souls in the movie theater about a year or so ago, and it was the Riff Tracks version of it. And I remember walking out of the theater with you, and you're like, oh my God, I could not have imagined watching that without the riff tracks. That was terrible. So clearly we weren't going to watch Carnival of Souls, but you have never seen Night of the Living Dead. And I thought, well, you know, it's a really great film in addition to being scary and a zombie movie and influential. And I figured, I'm never going to ask you to watch this with me again. I'll beg, but, I know it's not going to go anywhere. But, I love that you watched this with me tonight because I do know this movie really well. I grew up with it. I love this film. But I did want to watch it before class. I want to be ready to talk about it with my students and see some things that I had noticed before.
How many times have you seen this movie?
At least 10.
Wow.
Yeah, at least 10 times. But I'll tell you what, though, not to make this a plug for the Criterion collection, but it's never looked this good. I haven't had a chance to throw the disc on since I purchased it. And, it looked really good and clear. I'm used to this movie being all scratchy and splotchy and kind of blurry. The short version of it, this movie is in public domain. So there are so many versions of it out there, and most of them are not cleaned up. Most of them look really bad. This is the first time I've seen it, and I've really actually found myself invested in the performances, and I could actually hear most of the dialogue. It was a very cheaply made film. No disrespect, it was a low-budget indie, but nevertheless, it wasn't done with state-of-the-art equipment then, and time hasn't been kind to it until the Criterion folks cleaned this movie up. And yeah, watching it with you tonight, I was really, it really did feel like seeing it for the first time.
Well, we've talked about this movie, and you've always kind of done the line for me from the beginning.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Which I'm like, okay, well.
Now you know what that's from.
That's fun.
Johnny.
You're still afraid.
Stop it now, I mean it.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Stop it. You're ignorant.
They're coming for you, Barbara.
Stop it! You're acting like a child!
They're coming for you. Look, there comes one of them now.
So we watched Night of the Living Dead. Oh my gosh.
That is the title.
Just forgot.
Are we doing this too late?
It's funny. And I was surprised because I feel like I had already seen it, but I had never seen it all the way through. I've seen the first part. And you told me the ending, unfortunately, years ago.
I never thought you'd see it. So I'm like, it's a really amazing ending. Let me tell you what happens. I never thinking you would ever watch this with me. I do regret that.
Yeah. So you asked me, okay, well, why don't you just give the synopsis of the movie?
So Barbara and her obnoxious brother go to a
Johnny.
They go to the cemetery to put a headstone on their father's tomb. And they've been on the road. Apparently, it's a 6-hour road trip. Johnny is grumbling about it. Barbara's kind of indifferent about it. They're definitely a couple with a very contemptuous sort of relationship. A brother-sister couple.
Oh, okay.
Who have like a really kind of bratty kind of relationship. And moments after they get there, a zombie shows up, kills Johnny. Barbara's on the run. This zombie pursues her for quite some time, and then she finds herself in a deserted farmhouse.
Or so she thinks.
So she thinks. Then next thing you know, Benjamin shows up. Ben is played by Dwayne Jones, and he's the only African-American actor in this film. So Barbara and Ben, who, by the way, is never identified by his name, they're in the farmhouse together, and they discover that in the basement, after some time fighting these zombies off all by themselves, there is...
Let's be real. Ben's fighting the zombies, and Barbara is in some kind of weird PTSD trance.
Yeah, she's in terrible shock. She saw her brother get killed. Suddenly, she lives in a world where zombies are a thing. They discover in the basement there is the sexy dumb couple and the obnoxious, awful couple, the Coopers. Mr. Cooper is, we know he's evil because he's balding. He has terrible hair.
No, his wife isn't evil.
His wife is fine. I mean, they're clearly like this, and she's beautiful and kind of extravagant for him. It seems like there's the indication that their marriage is falling apart, that she's like, this is just another reason for her to leave him. Because of the extremeness of the situation, she's seeing him for who he truly is.
She should have left him like way
long
before
time ago.
this.
Yeah, but they got a kid, which might have been the thing that kept them together. They got a little girl who was wounded in a zombie attack, and she's tending to her wounds and laying down in the basement. But now that everything is out in the open, you basically have 6 adults. The one little girl who's in the basement basically has a plot device. And these 6 adults decide whether or not they're going to work together to board up the house and come up with a plan to either escape or just make it through the night.
Yeah, and I was surprised when the people under the stairs finally came out because I was not expecting that. So that was a fun twist, and I didn't know that there were so many people because there's like they kind of come out like 2 at a time, and then you don't know who's all down there. So that was fun. But when they finally come up with this plan, so Ben, he ends up on the property because he finds this truck, and then the truck needs more gas, and he sees that there's like a gas pump at this farmhouse, but it's locked up, and then the zombies are coming. So that's how he ends up in the house. And they come up with this plan to kind of make Molotov cocktails and throw them at the zombies, and then get in the truck, drive over, fill it up with gas, and then somehow get back to the farmhouse and get everybody in. Because they have figured out how to work the radio and the TV, and they're, we're hearing along with them what's going on, that there's these mass murderers out there and they don't know what happened, and it might be radiation, and, now they want everybody to go to these different, high schools and places where they can be protected by, the military. And I was laughing because the dumb couple,
the sexy dumb couple,
he's telling her, well, we need to go, we need to think of a plan. And she's like, but why? Why do we have to go? We're safe here. And he's like, because the TV told us to. Like, wow, if that's not, just a commentary on where we are.
Yeah, it's very relevant. I got to say, like, it's an interesting part of the film because to kind of, let me quickly say one of my favorite things about this movie. I mean, it's basically 6 adults trapped in a room together, and you're basically seeing how fear affects all of them in a very different way. They're all dealing with this ridiculous situation very differently. They're aware that this is worldwide. They become slowly but surely aware that the dead are alive and that they are cannibals, and that there has something to do with space radiation. That's probably why this thing happened in the first place. So they're aware of what's going on in some weird kind of disconnected way, but at the same time, they're all dealing with their fear differently. Some people like Barbara are shutting down. Mr. Cooper, who, I'm making jokes about his hair. I mean, he's awful. He is just awful, the worst. And this guy, like, on the one hand, he's very aggressive, but at the same time, he's doing that because he's terrified. So it's like he's like this self-destructive sort of guy. And his wife, who seems like she's a pretty cool person, but at the same time, she's also she's dealing with the biggest monster, which is her husband, not the zombies, and of course the fear that her daughter's downstairs. The sexy couple, they're just dreamily looking into each other's eyes. They don't even seem to be completely aware of the zombie apocalypse, while Barbara is dealing with her thing. But Ben is like, he is on it. He has, without even getting into the social commentary that this movie is clearly implying, Ben has clearly been up against a wall his whole life. Ben has clearly been dealing with, not only being oppressed and having to deal with the violence, but, having basically to think very quickly. So he, as Julia has indicated, he puts together this plan, and it's funny because it seems like it's like, yeah, this is great. This is going to be the part of the movie where we're going to move to a different location, because he gives Mr. Cooper, who is awful but somewhat competent, the job of being on the second floor of the house, great vantage point, lighting Molotov cocktails and just throwing it out the window. And as Julia said, that's like the best job. I mean,
that would have been my job.
How fun is that? Yeah, just to throw Molotov cocktails at zombies out of a second story window. Great. But unfortunately, sexy couple, they kind of improvise mid through the job. She ends up not wanting to leave her boyfriend, so she kind of at the last minute gets in the car with him. They go to this house. I guess we could spoil it. I mean, the movie did come out in 1968.
Yeah. If you need spoiler alerts, I'm sorry.
This is not the podcast for that.
Well, but the guy, so sexy guy, he tells Ben, I can drive the truck. And Ben's like, great. He's like, I got this. And then his wife, sexy wife, she can't wait in the house for him. Like, she has to go with him. And so she jumps in the truck and they drive to this gas pump. And what happens? They basically light themselves on fire.
On fire. Yeah. Cause Ben has a flaming torch. It's been flaming this whole time. And they start the gas machine, but the gas is like going everywhere.
He doesn't even park next to the gas pump like a normal person. He's like 10 feet away, and then he sprays the gas
spraying it everywhere, like whoa, I gotta get this into the and it just goes everywhere. Next thing you know, the truck's on fire, and the young couple is just driving away like it's gonna be okay.
Yeah, like they drive away thinking, maybe if we add more air to this,
maybe if we go faster, we'll douse the flames.
And Ben, you know what? To Ben's credit, I would have been like, what the no? He just sort of puts a blanket down and tries to stamp it out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the thing about movies like this is like, I always try to think, I don't know what it's like to be, I've had bad things happen to me, but not quite like this, obviously. So I try to give the benefit of the doubt to these characters when they do dumb things like hide in the closet or hide in the basement, whatever it is that, dumb people do in dumb horror movies or great horror films. But in this case, like sexy dumb couple, what they do is so stupid.
I just was dumbfounded.
Yeah, there's no way to apologize for this.
Crazy.
It's like, this is insane, and I don't know, like if the indication is that they're stupid young people, because again, like they only seem somewhat concerned about the whole zombie thing. It really is like let's just be together. We can't be apart.
But I hope our parents, we can like let them know they're probably worried about us. Are we going to be able to call them?
Right. Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. So anyway, to no one's surprise, the truck bursts into flames. They're instantly dead.
Like explodes.
The zombies are so happy. They got this free barbecue waiting for them. I mean, it's disgusting and but inevitable.
Yeah.
And Ben, does not lose his.
Yeah.
Ben
has to.
He keeps his act together. He's firing the shotgun, makes his way back to the house, and of course, Mr. Cooper
doesn't want to let him
tries
in.
to lock him out.
He's the worst. And then you know what? Ben just
beats the crap out of Mr.
he
Cooper,
punches
which
him
is
at least
which
3
is
times.
Oh, thing of beauty.
Like, yes.
Yeah, if there's ever crowd pleasing moment in the movie, it's that.
Major satisfaction.
Yeah.
Well, you asked me what character I would be in this movie, and I have no idea. What character do you think you would be?
I'd love to think that I would be like Ben, obviously, who doesn't want to be Ben, but I think I'd probably be a little bit like Barbara. I mean,
you'd probably like,
I don't know if I'd shut down or not. I'd like to think that I wouldn't. Because to think about the kind of, what this would be like. I've never been in a bank robbery. I've never been like mugged with a gun to my head. Or this is the kind of intensity we're talking about. Just like you kind of shut down. You go, I can't believe this is happening to me. And these characters are feeling it all the time. The situation is surreal. There's people dying all the time. Barbara is dealing with the death of her brother. Yeah, so I feel very sympathetic for these characters because the situation is so crazy in life. Even some of the things that I've lived through, I'm not going to name them, like, tragedies and things I've seen on TV or, things that where the world suddenly changed in front of us. This doesn't even compare because, again, the dead are rising from the grave. They're alive.
And they want to eat you.
And they're very hungry.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I can say who I would be, but I would definitely be more on the Ben side of the spectrum than the Barbara side. I think I would be like, okay, we need to assess this situation. If I got in the house and I was actually had a minute to think and pull my thoughts together, I would be yelling at Barbara too, because he was like, help me get some wood, get some nails, and then, he ends up punching her.
Yeah, I love this. Again, it's 1968. Give a whole history lesson, which I won't, but obviously the image of an African American man punching a white chick in the face was not something you saw in most movies, even a horror film. But again, like it's not exploitative. It's a character moment, and it's a good.
He was trying to like snap her out.
Exactly. It's not. Yeah. It's not. Again, it's not like exploitive in that way. But yeah, no, it's
because he sticks up for her later on.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's like, leave her alone,
Yeah, he does become like her caretaker. And they were the first ones. They discovered each other and they're helping each other out. Well, he's mostly helping her out.
She's doing nothing. Let's be
real. Next to nothing in this movie. Yeah.
Yeah. So Ben finally makes it back, punches out Mr. Cooper.
Yeah.
And
the zombies are eating. They're happy.
Yeah, the zombies have their barbecue.
Graphically eating.
Yeah. And so we're watching this news update on the TV, and I don't know, it's the middle of the night for these people and it's daytime on the broadcast. So I was confused about when if it had been aired earlier in the day for them, but this reporter asks he's talking to the police chief and he's asking him questions, and he just asks him, are they slow? Are these killers slow? And the police chief says, yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up. I just lost it.
Chief, if I were surrounded by 6 or 8 of these things, would I stand a chance with them?
Well, there's no problem. If you had a gun, shoot them in the head. That's a sure way to kill them. If you don't, get yourself a club or a torch. Beat them or burn them. They go up pretty easy.
Well, Chief McClellan, how long do you think it will take you until you get the situation under control?
Well, that's pretty hard to say. We don't know how many of them there are. We know when we find them, we can kill them.
Are they slow-moving, Chief?
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
It is a little inconsistent, not in a way that I think hurts the movie or hurts the lore of it, but this is always the thing why zombies have never scared me as movie monsters, which isn't to say this movie isn't scary. It is, and you were jumped a few times. I still find this film frightening in a lot of ways.
Well, there were just a couple things that scared me. There's a dead body in the house, and then, I don't know, there was like one other time.
A hand comes through the window. You definitely didn't. There's a death scene we're going to talk about shortly, which is pretty horrifying.
Yeah, but overall, it wasn't a movie where I had, something over my face or anything like that.
Okay.
Okay. And some of the acting, obviously, where the women are like, oh, like they're like kind of moving. It feels like everyone's moving in slow motion a little bit.
Yeah, to my point, zombies don't scare me because they're reanimated corpses. And obviously the corpses that are just coming back, I mean, obviously those are probably the best, most effective killing corpses. But when you think about this idea that they're coming out of the grave, they're coming out of the coffin, or they're coming out of the mausoleum, whatever. I mean, like, those joints and those limbs, they shouldn't be working that well. Zombies shouldn't be that much of a threat. The first zombie we see in this film, and the movie has a great callback to that. He's in the last scene of the film too. The very first zombie that Barbara and her brother see stumbling around in the cemetery, he's very powerful. He's very strong. He's very fast. He's a quick killer.
Yeah, but he's also wandering around the cemetery.
Yeah, you think he's like a crazy hobo at first.
Yeah, like you don't really know
which is a really nice misdirect. Yeah. But yeah, the zombies are, again, like, this is not a criticism against the film. I think it's pretty much a near perfect film. But some of the zombies, they're, some of these extras, they've got really elaborate makeup on. They're like going full method. And some of these actors look like they just woke up and haven't showered in a couple days, and they just walked onto the set. And George Romero's like, you're a zombie.
Great. You have bags under your eyes.
Just stare at the camera and walk around there. Oh, that's good. Yeah, and you don't have anything. Take your clothes off.
Yeah, there's
perfect.
A
perfect.
Naked zombie.
There's a naked zombie who, her power is nudity. She doesn't do anything. Just walks around she's like a distraction for the other zombies.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Then we have the kid. Ben is asking the parents, what happened to your daughter, and because they're trying to figure out another vehicle since his truck exploded.
Sexy dumb couple destroyed the getaway vehicle.
And so they're like, well, our car's a mile away. You're not going to be able to carry our daughter and all this nonsense. And so he said, well, what happened to her? And they said, well, she was bit by one of them. And he's like, disgusting. They probably have so many diseases.
Which I gotta say is one of the most sensible things anyone's brought up in this movie. Ben is like, okay, your daughter got bit by one of these things. She probably, at the very least, has rabies or something really, really bad.
Yeah.
Like, he gets it immediately that this is going to be a problem. And of course, the film takes it to a very nightmarish level. There's a murder scene that happens where the little girl is reanimated. She takes a garden tool, murders her mother. I'd never counted before. She stabs her 14 times.
Yeah, it's intense.
It's grisly stuff.
Yeah, it really is. And even I was like, okay, this is getting really bad.
Yeah. That's when you're like, okay, now it's bad.
Now it's bad. Now the daughter's
when the cute little girl is
murdering her mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah. Now we're getting close to the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I love this film because it takes off immediately. Julia was going into the kitchen to like get her something to drink, and she's like, you want some chocolate covered almonds? I'm like, no, come back, watch. I'm like, you gotta see the beginning because like this movie, even though it does have dialogue, it doesn't have a lot. And I'm just like, you gotta watch this movie from beginning to end because like it takes off like a rocket. I mean, there's only like 3 minutes of dialogue. The zombies show up, and then it's this great pursuit. I love the scene of Barbara escaping to the house in a car with no keys in it. And then, there's a bit of talking in the house about what they're gonna do. But really, I mean, this is, it works like an action movie.
A slow motion action movie.
Well, yeah, because the thread is, they're taking their time, but
they are taking their time. But yeah, eventually the zombies kind of decide to break into the house, and then everybody either has to retreat to the basement or they get killed, and we're just end up with one character. Good old Ben.
Yeah, it's I don't know. Like, it didn't do anything for you. It always bothered me that Barbara basically eats it because her brother.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she sees her brother in the horde of zombies. She's like, Johnny, and of course, Johnny isn't wearing his glasses, but he's ghoulish, and he.
Well, yeah, I mean, she wanted to go out and save him, but of course Ben punches her and says no.
It's the only way to get across to Barbara, apparently.
But yeah, it's really sad.
I thought so. I mean, that's probably the image that's always bothered me the most, that it goes full circle back to her brother, and and it's like these characters are not acting rationally because, for example, the mother isn't going to part with her daughter. Barbara, her whole thing is like, we got to go back and find my brother. It's like there's this human aspect to this that it's like, and that's the thing about zombies in general, I should say. We're not talking about werewolves or vampires. I mean, these are people. These are human beings.
I think all the women basically die because they're attached to a family member.
Yes.
That's basically how it happens.
I completely agree. Yeah.
Yeah, who's the film professor now?
If you want to teach my students,
I'm just kidding.
You go right ahead.
Just kidding. No, but that's exactly why.
No, you're right about that. And the men are like, they're kind of like working out their traditional male roles, and it's not working. Or it's just like it's a reverse, because clearly in a typical movie, sexy young guy would be the star.
Yeah.
He would be the lead. In 1968, Ben would probably be told to, he would probably be, to use a terrible term, he'd probably be put in his place, or he'd be told no, you're going to listen to us and do what we say.
Yeah, but Ben takes control.
That's the wonderful thing about it. No, Ben is.
You're going to be in the upstairs.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm in charge of the upstairs. You go to the basement.
Right.
And you be in charge in the basement.
He's an empowered African American man, and most importantly, I mean, he's a really smart man. So the film, again, it's like it's reversing expectations for the way this role will be treated in most movies at this point in time. And then meanwhile, Mr. Cooper normally would be like this loving father figure. What's great about Mr. Cooper, not only is he not that at all, when he exits the film, nobody reacts at all. Like, it's not even the tragedy of like the loss of life. Even his wife is like, oh well.
I mean, even the camera doesn't linger on him.
Yeah.
He's just sort of left in the corner.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotta say, like, it's great. You can almost feel the movie's contempt for this character.
Yeah, definitely. So then we see all of the police and the search parties. And
it's the next morning.
Yeah, they're going through and they're trying to find alive people, but they're trying to kill all the zombies and then burn them. Mm-hmm. Because they decided headshots and burning are the only way to get rid of them for good.
Yep.
So, Ben's in the basement and he's hearing dogs barking and he's hearing gunshots and he's kind of waking up and he's thinking...
He's the lone survivor.
Yeah, I survived this. I'm going to get out of here.
Yes, and all too quickly, he goes upstairs. He has a shotgun in hand. He looks out the window, and one of the men searching for signs of life just instinctively takes the gun and shoots him in the head, and the film ends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's no way he saw this guy's face when he shot him. He just saw movement, knew there was a person in there, and didn't know if it was a zombie or a human, and just took him out.
There's also the possibility that he just saw a black man and decided, bang.
You know what? I think you'd mentioned that to me before, and I just don't...
You don't see it?
No, I don't see it, because he was in the shadows inside this house, and the windows were still partially boarded up. I just don't think that cop...
He is the one African-American man in this
him.
entire film.
Yeah, I know that.
During the 60s. And,
yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I don't think... I feel like that the guy who shot him was too far away, and just the way the lighting... I mean, maybe because it maybe if the movie was in color, I would see it differently, but it seems like he was really in the shadows inside of that room with the boards.
You think they were just firing at movement in general?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they thought there was something in there, and I don't think he saw who or what.
It's a plausible interpretation, because there's a montage of shots where, literally shots where you're seeing how these guys in broad daylight are just shooting people in the distance walking around. And a couple times I wondered, did anybody bother to check, if Maud escaped from the old folks home? There's some they're just shooting anything that moves in the distance slowly. And I'm thinking, did they check? Are they sure?
Yeah.
So I think to your point, that could very well be that. Just at this point, these guys, as I've indicated, I'm sure they've probably been up all night, and they're probably just trigger happy at this point.
Exactly. And they're hoping to just be done with this whole situation. So, because when you had told me the ending, I don't know, years ago.
I'm amazed you even remembered the ending.
I know. I thought he came out on the porch and was then shot.
Okay.
And so then I was thinking, oh, maybe there is an argument that there is racism involved, you know, as well as this zombie thing. But after seeing it, I don't think so.
Well, what do you make of the final moments? The end credits kick in, but then it's a photo montage of how they dispatch of the body and they burn the body. I mean, I think the imagery, and I know Romero was certainly making a commentary because his movies are all social commentary. He makes zombie movies and disguises the zombies of the Trojan horse for what he really wants to talk about. In this case, you know, the final moments, I mean, I think you can say that it is pretty explicit that he's trying to make the comment about, you know, violence against African Americans and violence against human beings in general at this point in time. At this point in time, we're not only talking 68 about civil rights, we're talking about Vietnam, we're talking about the protests, we're talking about all sorts of bad stuff happening in this country, which unfortunately we've come full circle to.
I didn't have any strong feelings or thoughts during the ending photo montage. I don't know.
So you don't see the social commentary then, in terms of talking about race relations. You don't see it in this film.
No, I'm not saying that. I think what you said was right on. I just don't think that he was shot because he was black.
And you know, and to your point too, I mean, the movie doesn't really make the observation verbally that he's African American.
Yeah, nobody says anything.
Nobody
to
says
him.
anything. There is the line where Mr. Cooper, you know, some people have said like that's interesting, where Ben is taking charge. He's telling him to get in the basement. me and sexy young guy will take care of this. You just stay in the basement. And Mr. Cooper looks at him and goes like, "You bastards!" And it's not indicated whether he's just talking about the two of them or if he's talking about black people in general. People have said like, well, you could maybe that was his way of you know. Yeah, the movie, otherwise, they never make reference to Ben's race.
Yeah, which is fine.
Which is also the sign of a progressive filmmaker, because most movies at this point would not only make a point of it, but, you know, treat it in a way that's really, really cartoonish and cliched.
Yeah, I found it actually refreshing that they didn't really make a big deal about it. Like, Ben was just... You know, he's telling his story about what happened to him and he ends up in this farmhouse just like all the rest of these people, which is completely plausible to any real life situation. I mean, who knows if something happened in real life and you were in the middle of nowhere and there was some house, you could end up in a house with anybody, you know, man, woman, child, any race, whatever. So I kind of like that he just that was his decision, that he went with it, and Ben was in charge, and that's just the way that it was.
And Romero was definitely making, you know, again, like in a very smart way, he was making a progressive decision of just like, hey, I'm going to have this actor in this role, and it's going to be a role that you don't normally see an African-American man in at all.
Yeah.
And it's you know, it's funny now, we go like, well, this is the thing. This is typical for most movies. But in 68, I mean, unless your name was Sidney Poitier, if you were a man of color, you were not the star of the movie, unless it was a blaxploitation film, which came later.
Yeah. So I do think you could probably opine about all sorts of like messages about what the movie's trying to say. But I think just on a surface level, it's just a really good horror zombie movie. And
do you think it's good? You like it?
Yeah, I mean, okay, zombies are the least scary to me.
I feel the same way.
We've talked about this. Yeah. I don't know.
Werewolves bother me more, although I've always said if I could be a monster, I would definitely want to be a werewolf. I can't think of anything cooler than turning into like a 7-foot tall dog with superhuman strength. I'm like, okay, my problem is I have a lot of fur and I like to eat meat. It's like, no, I could make that work. I think vampirism is a much bigger problem because you have to murder people at least once a day. You have to drink blood, which is gross. Yeah. And, you know, you can shapeshift, which I think is probably more of a hassle than anything.
I mean, I don't know. We've watched a lot of like comedy zombie horror movies.
Yeah, that's true. Like I took you to see Shaun of the Dead when it was in the theater.
Yeah.
And I think I showed you Warm Bodies, which is also a zombie love story. But I don't think I would be hard pressed to think of another actual zombie movie I've ever had you watch. And honestly, like, I'm a real snob about these movies. George A. Romero is the director of Night of the Living Dead. What I've been saying for years, and most people think it's obnoxious when I say this, the other zombie movies just don't matter. I think his are the ones that matter because, again, his movies, he's using zombies to talk about
He did more
society.
zombie movies?
He sure did.
Oh, wow.
He's done a lot of different kinds of films. He did Creepshow and The Dark Half, great films, but primarily horror. But no, he after this, in 1978, so this is 10 years later, he did Dawn of the Dead, which is this movie in a shopping mall. So you've got zombies. I mean, it's
Didn't
dark.
I see the remake of that?
You might have, and it's not that. I don't think it's that great, but people
Yeah.
love it. But yeah, the zombies are kind of brainlessly walking around a mall, which is a total comedy about consumerism. He did Day of the Dead, which is set in a military base, which I'm not crazy about, though it has its fans. One of my favorites is Land of the Dead, which was very much about the George W. Bush presidency, and Dennis Hopper is like the stand-in for W. I think it's a wonderful film. Simon Baker and John Leguizamo and Asia Argento are in it. I think it's a wonderful film that came out in 2005. He did, Diary of the Dead, which I think is the found footage one. And then I think there's one more. I think it's like Island of the Dead. I think
Wow,
that one wasn't very good.
Too many of the deads.
But I don't know. But every time, the thing is though, every time he made these movies, they were always, again, always talking about what was important to him, what's going on in society, the way Rod Serling or Gene Roddenberry used science fiction to talk about society and talk about the things that were pressing with him. Romero used zombies, and I've always loved that about him. And that's why I don't think any of the other zombie movies matter. I think his are the only that matter. We just lost this guy, and we just lost Romero recently, and I just think somebody else has to step up because I liked World War Z, but I don't.
Oh yeah, World War Z.
I think it's a very good movie, but I don't think it really matters the way Night of the Living Dead does, and I don't think it has. I think it's it's more of an action movie than anything, and I think it's great as an action movie, and it's fine as a Brad Pitt vehicle, and it's very well done. But I only think of that movie because it's that $100 million zombie movie they made.
Yeah. So going back to the ending, though, really quick.
Yes.
How would you have felt if Ben had lived? Like if he had come out of that house and was like, "Don't shoot, I'm a person," or whatever. How do you think the commentary would be different?
I don't know if I would buy it. Because this movie is about the loss of human life. The movie begins in a cemetery. One of something I always thought was interesting was that as the opening credits begin, and they're not particularly fancy or stylish opening credits, but the last credit, directed by George A. Romero, it's on an American flag. It's on one of the tombstones has an American flag waving on it. So it's like, again, I think Romero is kind of setting the table that this movie is a representation or a metaphor of where we were, or again, where we are. But also, because the movie begins in a cemetery, somebody dies in the first 3 minutes. And it's one of the two characters we're just met, we're just getting to know, and we do like him on some level because he's entertaining. He's interesting.
No, we don't.
It's not like Mr. Cooper where we're just counting the minutes till he dies. We care about him.
The only thing I said about Johnny was, wow, this guy complains a lot.
In any case, it's her brother. It's tragic.
It is tragic.
So my point being is that...
bad for Barbara, but...
Yeah, we should feel bad for Barbara. She's watched her brother die. So my point is that I don't think an optimistic ending would have worked. I think it might have felt like a cop-out. I think a better ending would be that Ben escapes on the run. I don't think I buy an ending where he's, working with the local sheriff department.
No, I'm not saying that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Ben... I would love to think about an ending where, Ben could have, got in a car and driven off.
Let's do that ending.
I don't want to touch perfection. No, I don't want to mess with this movie. Plus, I'm not going to give him any dialogue. It's Night of the Living Dead. This movie, the best scenes of this movie are,
Yeah, I think if I could change the ending, Ben would have fallen asleep in the basement.
And he wakes up and it's all a dream.
No.
And everybody is at the Thanksgiving table like, Ben, we saved you a spot. Oh, thank you. Mr. Cooper's like, we're so glad you're here, Ben. We just love you. Happy Thanksgiving there, buddy.
Oh my gosh, no, that's
And the little girl is like, Uncle Ben, every time the bell rings, an angel gets its wings.
wow. This is getting
That's
worse
right.
and worse.
That's right.
Stop.
With the twist ending, there's a knock at the door. They open the door. And there's a freeze frame of the zombies.
Okay, that is not.
That's a great ending.
That's not what I
Yeah,
was
the
thinking.
double twist dream ending.
A
Yeah.
double twist dream. Okay, no, my ending
Okay.
would be Ben falls asleep.
Okay.
He doesn't hear the search party.
Okay.
He just is. He's blissfully asleep because he's so tired from all his zombie fighting.
From dealing from plus slapping Barbara and Mr. Cooper.
yeah.
All the slaps.
And just being so pissed at sexy young couple.
Yes.
And then they clean up everything outside and they leave. And then he finally wakes up and he walks out of the house and it walks off into the field and just starts his life over. That's it.
Interesting. Because I mean, the indication is that the zombies are everywhere. I mean, is he a mountain man? I mean,
No, the zombies have all been taken out by the National Guard.
you think?
That's what yes.
I mean, do you really? I don't know. I
No.
no.
Okay.
I think they're trying. I don't think they've.
You don't think they've
But
succeeded
in your
yet.
version, but to go back to it's your version. So if your version of it is that this is like the end of Stephen King's The Mist, where the threat is being eliminated, the military's on the run.
Yeah. The threat has been neutralized,
Okay.
as it were.
Yes.
And yeah, there's probably still a few rogue zombies out there, but Ben's not gonna encounter them. He's gonna, maybe he has a wife and kids somewhere. Maybe they survived. I don't know. Maybe he's going back home.
That sounds like the plot of World War Z. This whole idea of personalizing the zombie movie, making it about the need to protect one or two, while hundreds around you die.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know. But you do get attached to Ben. 'Cause
Very
he's
much.
the only one
He's
who
great.
has a good head on his
no,
shoulders.
and Dwayne Jones, who plays him, I think is wonderful in this movie. Everybody, I think, is quite good. I mean, sometimes the performances are either too little or too much. You kind of wonder if these are like stock theater actors, who like Romero was trying to find anybody he could. But I think everyone, for the most part, does what is required of them quite well. But yeah, Dwayne Jones, I do feel like, I mean, this is his milestone as an actor in movies, but I think he's quite good in this.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so it basically ended the way it needed to end.
I think so. I don't know if hope is the right thing. One of my favorite things about horror films, and I haven't told my students this yet because it goes either way, but I do want to eventually get to this. I feel like there's an honesty to them because horror movies don't hold your hand and tell you it's all going to be okay. They don't, and they do the opposite. And I think that's one of the things about them that's so valuable.
Wow, that's depressing, though.
How many times have I seen a romantic comedy? It's like they live happily ever after, and I'm thinking, no, they don't. What happened? Oh, like this, like okay, like so in Us Love Dogs, their dogs love each other, and now they're walking away. And
example ever.
well, even when Harry met Sally, like, are they really going to be together forever? Come on. I think I like the idea of an ellipsis, not the end period, but an ellipsis. This idea of like, well, then like
Even when Harry Met Sally is an ellipsis.
maybe, but I mean, they end up together.
Yeah, of course they end up together.
I'm not saying I don't want them to be together. I'm just
know.
saying like.
And they talk about their wedding, but like, we don't know what actually happens after that.
I think, I mean, and it's interesting. Of course, I mean, these two genres could not be more dissimilar, but I mean, I know like we're talking about like my favorite genre and your favorite genre. I'm just saying the thing about your favorite genre that I don't like is the optimism, the blind optimism. I think the best romantic comedies end in a sense of uncertainty and also, just a little bit of reality as opposed to like everything is going to be great. It's great. Everything is great. You can go home. They're great. Don't worry. They're still together forever of all time. It's great. Okay.
Yeah.
Go to your car.
I know, but sometimes real life is the horror movie, and you need some blind optimism.
But, one of the appeals of horror movies is that you see these films and it's a cathartic experience. You scream, you feel, you tense up, and then it's over. It's like, it's like you get off the roller coaster.
And then you have nightmares for the rest of the night.
No, you watch the movie, you live vicariously through the characters. You go, okay, I would never be like stupid, sexy, dumb couple. I would never be hanging with Mr. Cooper. I want to be a Ben. I want to be a Ben. That is the goal. In life, we all need to be Bens. We need to take charge. We need to think clearly. We need to think about what the next thing is. We need to stick up for those who are incapable of defending themselves, those who are so crippled with fear. She's on the couch just staring at the embroidery.
Yeah, that's so sad.
No, Ben's the man, and he's a stand-up guy, and definitely a role model. Not only because he's a rare, sharp, smart African American in the 1960s, in a time when movies didn't feature that, but also because he's a cool cat in general, and he's clearly the one guy in this movie who's going to make it to the end, until he doesn't.
See, even you actually want him to make it in the end.
Well, of course, but that's the appeal of the movie. That's one of the things that makes the movie so powerful, because life sometimes isn't fair, and it's not fair at the end of Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah, that's true.
And it wasn't fair for the filmmakers. Fun fact, they shot it under a different title, Night of the Flesh Eaters. That was the title they put the copyright on. They decided to change the title to Night of the Living Dead, a little more mainstream, not so gross. They could actually put newspaper ads as opposed to Night of the Flesh Eaters, which people are going I'm not going to put that in a family newspaper. So Night of the Living Dead opens, and it's drive-ins, midnight movies. I mean, it was a blockbuster, played in theaters for years and years, but they didn't copyright the name Night of the Living Dead. So the movie went into public domain. George A. Romero, everybody involved, nobody made any money off this movie.
Oh.
Yeah.
Let that be a lesson to you, future filmmakers listening.
Copyright the name of your movie. It's very, very, very important. And it's interesting too, because
don't just put it on YouTube.
Well, it's crazy because right now, I mean, people have remade this film shot by shot. There are colorized versions of it. There's 3D versions. There are versions of this movie that just should not be out there. But I mean, yeah, you could find so many versions of this movie that exist because of that botch. They remade this film, Romero and some of the original team members and producers, just with the whole plan of we're going to make a version of this movie that makes some money. In 1990, they did a color remake of it, and it's good, but it flopped. So it's this movie, for all the success it brought, that success was never, with its creators. It's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, that is a bummer.
Yeah.
I do feel bad about that.
Yeah.
But let that just be a lesson to all of us in the future to copyright our stuff.
That's the lesson of Night of the Living Dead. Is there something that Ben could have done at the end of the movie that could have saved him, you think? Was it a bad move on Ben to be optimistic after, being the pessimistic realist for most of the movie?
Well, he comes out of the basement very cautiously.
Yeah, and he's got a gun in hand.
Yeah, it's not like he's busting out the door.
Should he have stayed in the basement? Should he have,
I don't know. I think he should have maybe called out to them. And I'm not
not dead.
Not dead. I'm alive or something. Maybe that would have made a difference. But who's to say? You've already made up your mind that this is how it needed to be.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, do you like this movie?
I do like this movie. Surprisingly, I did. I'm surprised I liked it. So
that's great. Yeah, because I'm surprised too, frankly. Thank you for watching. Thank you for doing my homework with me. I appreciate it. And
you're welcome.
There's a lot more to talk about, but we could certainly wrap it up because it is late.
Did I help you with your lecture for next week?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things to talk about, again, not only are the socio-political things about this movie, which of course is something I'm going to latch on to because, again, it's 1968.
No, and I think you should for your class. Maybe not right now.
Well, no, not right this second.
Okay.
What I'm saying is watching it with you and talking to you about this, it helps me kind of get into the mindset of what I'm going to be talking to them about. And also, I mean, I
gauge what your students are going to say because they're going to be like me. They've only just seen it one time.
Yeah, because there will be students who have never seen this before. Mm-hmm. Definitely. most of my students, I suspect, have not only seen Shaun of the Dead and World War Z and 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later and all those films. But zombie movies are, it's old hat. It's a cliche. Most people it's a big word and it's a huge generalization. But seriously, most people believe in a zombie apocalypse. We've known people, who really genuinely believe in a zombie apocalypse that's coming.
Oh, that reminded me of the one zombie comedy that I love,
Which is?
I can't remember. With
What's it about?
No,
Maybe I could help you. I've seen a few of these things.
like the double tap.
Zombieland. There you go.
Duh.
There you go. Yeah. So my students, they're familiar with all these things.
They've probably seen Zombieland
many times. I'm sure they
love it.
And they've seen the sequel too. And in this case, this is the one that basically started, as I was telling you before the movie started. There have been movies about zombies prior to this, but this is the movie that set forth the idea that they are definitely undead ghouls, they are corpses, and they are cannibals. I mean, Romero put that in motion, and every movie that dealt with zombieism subsequently owes everything to Night of the Living Dead.
And on that note, you guys, we're going to go to bed. And thank you for hanging out with us.
Yeah, so whether you're listening to this on Halloween or on Christmas, happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas to all.
Thanks, everybody.